Kia ora and welcome to the Trends Property Insight series. I'm your host, Andrew Johnson, and in this episode, we're stepping away from the bricks and mortar to focus on the most important property you will ever own, your body. Joining us is Bryan Ellis, a neuromuscular and rehabilitative therapist who helps people build strength, manage stress, and navigate life's challenges, both physically and mentally. Whether you're renovating, relocating, or rebuilding from the inside out, this conversation is all about staying well throughout the highs and lows of your property journey. Well, Bryan, thank you for taking some time to sit down and have a chat to me today. It's a pleasure to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, now, some people may think, why have we got someone like you on a property podcast? But hopefully by the end of it, they get an understanding of some of the connections between the most important property we'll ever own, which is our body.
Yes.
Now, for those people who don't know you, how come you do what you do in the field of expertise that you have?
Okay, so I'm a neuromuscular and rehabilitative therapist in a clinic in New Lynn called Lifestyles. And from an early age, I was interested in human bodies and physiology, so much so that at 15 years old, I would go to the reference section of the library and read the reference books on anything that I could. Ended up doing a degree in neuromuscular therapy and an undergraduate degree in osteopathy. I've been in and out of gyms since I was 17. I was fortunate enough to be trained by world-class trainers, just by happenstance. So that worked in well with my personality type. I'd always wanted to be something like a physiotherapist from a young age. So when the opportunity arose to come and study, I took that opportunity. One degree with the idea that I would then stack another degree on top of that and become something. So what I've become is a rehabilitative therapist, and the main thrust of what I do is to point people in the right direction and help them line their ducks up in a row, essentially. So it's always framed in that way because it essentially is what I do. We further frame it as my hands not being magical, because they're not. There's table time, there's gym and rehab time, and there's a lot of reframing that goes on, a lot of conversation that goes on to help people become more consistent over time. So, I'm doing what I always wanted to do in reality.
That's awesome. And there's a natural connection between our body going through the physical spaces that we're either renovating and refurbishing and building and all that kind of stuff, and we're having to move and navigate the stresses of the property journey. And so when you're dealing with rehabilitation people, do you find, like when we talk to people about the property journey, it's going to be a little bit longer than maybe you thought? And here's sort of what that journey looks like. How does those conversations happen with people at the start?
Yeah, so timeframes almost always exceed expectation. People want things to happen quickly and efficiently, seamlessly in some way. And that's just generally not the case. So conversations will often lean towards helping people reorganize their timeframes and go, okay, if you've injured yourself, maybe your bones are going to remodel in 8 weeks and your tissue is going to re-heal in 6 weeks. But you're probably not going to fully recover in some capacity for a good 12 weeks. And then you're going to need to make it stronger again. And so we have all these layers that that they don't expect that that's what's really going to happen in their systems. If they're just trying to modify their system in some way so that they can go through a day a little bit better, like that really is a consistency over time scenario. And so one of the things that we would talk about, I would go, okay, well, consistency over time is what got you here, and consistency over time is what will get you out. And so we'll start introducing concepts like this so that people can reframe their minds literally and start to realize that, okay, I can become more consistent in this area, and that's what gets me through. It's not all the individual things. Like there's not one thing that's more important than anything else. It's like just don't stop. Yeah, let's keep going.
And is there a split between those people who come to you because of an injury, or literally just bad habits over time and having to, as you say, reframe those behaviours that have actually led them to be with you? It's not just because they have broken their arm.
Yeah, the majority of people come to me because they've formed habits. So I deal with some acute injuries, but generally I will send them off to the appropriate places. So my role is to point you in the right direction. So often that may be, it's more advantageous for them to go and see a physiotherapist, but we'll have a conversation about why they should go and see the physiotherapist and how they might want to interact with the physiotherapist before they wind up a physiotherapist's office and go, hang on, the physio's only given me exercise prescription, in which case I would go, well, yes, because the only thing that will make you more resilient. Most people will end up in my office saying that they've been and seen various people and it hasn't worked out. But after a small amount of questioning, you realize that they probably didn't take the advice that they were given in the first instance. So it really is getting people to navigate their way through where it is that they want to end up, because they really don't know.
Yeah, and I think for us with Trends Property, we're talking to people about, there are particular journeys they're on, so they might be buying or selling or building and so forth. And it's a journey that they may have a goal at the end of it, so they know possibly some of the steps. Hopefully we're able to educate them on what those steps are if they're not aware of them. But how much of your physical, like neuromuscular aspect of what you do in terms of the word, but how much of it is actually to do with sort of the human mind or the mindset of some of the people that come to see you?
Yeah, so it's a pretty even split. You're never just working on your body. There is a reframe that needs to happen. So there is, this isn't working without that, and that's not working without this. And people have a tendency to want to separate these two items out, but they are the same system. And the influence that their mind has on their body is very significant. So we would take into consideration things like hormones like dopamine or serotonin, which are incredibly powerful. Oxytocin, if you've ever been in love or liked a cat or a dog, you'll know how powerful something like oxytocin can be. Dopamine and serotonin aren't all that different. People just are generally masking it a little bit throughout their day with getting cheap serotonin or dopamine with chocolates or something that they enjoy that comes with no effort. But if they were able to prolong an experience where they did something that gave dopamine or gave serotonin with even the smallest amount of effort or duress in tiny amounts, and cut out all of that other free sort of dopamine that burns out your postsynaptic receptors after a while, they would realize over time how powerful these types of things are. So it's important to have a reframe, because the psychosomatic effects on your system, like just having a negative thought or having a little bit of extra stress on a day-to-day basis, is going to raise your blood pressure.
Yes.
By default, immediately, psychosomatic increases in your heart rate. These kind of prolonged things or thought processes that steal your sleep, and you're not experiencing a decent amount of REM sleep throughout a night's sleep, so your body will deficit, and then the next night it will try to prolong that REM sleep. And if you don't get that, then that cycle continues, and then people literally fall into personality disorders from lack of sleep. And so all of these things are quite chaotic, but kind of everybody's sort of experiencing it, so it feels like the normal in society.
Yeah.
There'll be a few people who aren't doing those things, that are kind of looking after it, and their day feels less heavy. Yeah. So there's a big reframe that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's like sort of putting a bit of a mirror up to people and their behaviour, because it's just sort of what you do to deal with your day-to-day life, let alone if you're in a process renovating your house, trying to buy or sell a house, you've got money, you've got processes, you've got contracts, you've got legal, you've got so many things that add to that stress.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if I could put some sort of steps in place, I can self-reward myself in a more positive and sustainable way with, good mind control with the serotonin oxy.
Yeah, you can, and it's more of a diligent practice over time. Everything is rudimentary functional practice, essentially. So when you are working towards something, you're not immediately an expert at it. And so that expectation needs to be sort of rendered accurately to people. Like, you're going to experience amateurish practice for a period of time. And
do you get that when you explain to people first off what to do? It feels like that's pretty basic.
Yeah, it seems obvious, but what I've found over time is that you do need to say that out loud. I'm more in a habit of saying everything out loud for people so that nothing is missed, so that they understand the process that they're going to go through as much as possible. Then there's no surprises, because people are like a possum in the headlights. The second you are unsure as to what to do, what to eat, how to exercise, when to sleep, all of these questions that arise, they freeze. And because it's not a threat that's making you run away necessarily. So you're going to, your fight or flight part of your system is going to freeze immediately. And so they'll get a bit stuck.
Yeah.
And so as a part of a reframe, I'm like, well, let's just have some conversation and let's explain this in a sort of a distillation of the essence of the idea of things, because there's no point opening a textbook and reading chapter 17 or such. It's important to go through every little tidbit of information and go, that's why you're doing this, and practice this so that you can go through that amateurish practice. It can become expert practice, and then that can become autonomous action. And that's the emergent property of rudimentary functional practices, that you're going to get something later on down the track if you stick at it, that when other people look at it, they're going, oh, it's quite impressive, actually.
Yeah, right.
My words would be like, let's try and make things look a little bit like a Cirque du Soleil act.
Right, so the concept of like singularity, right? They've brought together all of that time, effort, and those learns from that to bring something so seamless.
That's it. For a single moment, yeah. Go and see an orchestra play for a couple of hours, and it's tens of thousands of hours of practice from hundreds of people sitting on a stage playing a musical instrument. They didn't just arrive and then do that.
Yes.
So that's what you're really watching.
Yeah.
You're watching. It's quite majestic to see all of that rabble compiled into something very seamless and very, very smooth.
Yes.
Humans like that. We want to see something perfect.
Yeah.
We like things that are elegant. And if it looks elegant, it probably is.
Well, for me, it draws a personal metaphor of where we ended up with our new house recently. Everyone's like, wow, amazing, beautiful, wonderful. But it's the result of hours and hours and days, months, even, years of actually getting us to that particular, to find that place, find that that's for us, everything that went into it. So it's sort of similar to the work that goes on behind, it looks easy to run up the stairs, right? You're light because you've been doing the work every day to just do your squats, do your stretches and bits and pieces.
Yeah, that's it. And so those types of reframes are highly important, that people walk themselves through it, or they get walked through it over a period of time, so that they learn to reframe. Let's say we're working on our body, because that's what I would do for people mostly, their body and their mind in relation to their body. But we're walking ourselves through that and learning to become a master of that over time. And the expectation that I would suggest to people is that they learn to do one thing in some area fairly well and be diligent at it and be consistent over time, to realize how to be consistent over time and start to apply that to other things. And so mostly what I will talk to people about will be fundamental laws of reality. And you can extrapolate those out and apply those to what we would do with our body, to your mind, or to some emotional content, or to some other area of life where you're like, okay, well, how do I learn to play a violin? Well, rudimentary functional practice is going to be what you start with, and so on and so forth, into expert practice, autonomy.
Yeah.
And then you start playing with it. Now you're having fun. Now it's just playtime. And so the amount of dopamine and serotonin that you'll get on that journey doesn't really stop, because then you start playing and you are constantly trying to, if you love it and you go back to it all the time, you're going to constantly try to modify it and turn it into something new and exciting. So you'll just get more reward.
And you talk about a violin there, but you're a drummer, right? So
Yes,
how does that apply to you when you're practicing, or just, do you spend your time doing that to apply that for yourself?
I do. For the last 40 months, I've been training in the exact style that I tell my clients to train in. And so that has been what I would describe as the bare minimum that I think any person could probably do in a day to still make it through a day and be strong enough to get through their whatever work situation they're in, or whatever day they want to have. The analogy that I would use for people, and that you and I have talked about before, is, are you strong enough to climb a hill to see a sunset? And if you're not strong enough to climb a hill to see a sunset and you're sitting there and staring at the sunset thinking about how hard that hill was, then you kind of messed up a long time before you ever got to that sunset. And if you see the hill and then decide not to go up it, then you made a mistake long before you ever even got to that hill. And so I would want to do things in my day that allowed me to make it up a hill to see a sunset. It's free and it's quite majestic. I don't know anybody who's allergic to looking at sunsets. And so I would use that analogy to go, what's my minimum requirement for a day in my effort, exercise-wise, or my mental capacity or my emotional exercise that I would do that would allow me to go and sit and just be in a sunset and enjoy it and not think about what's going on. And to just achieve something like that takes a little bit of rudimentary functional practice.
Yep.
Exercise-wise, I'm strong enough to climb a hill. I'm not training like an athlete. Barely break a sweat. Probably 90% of the time I wouldn't break a sweat.
Yep.
But I don't go through a day and do nothing.
And
becomes
so,
the rule.
Yeah, so when you're applying that rule in your day-to-day practice, if you like, and taking that selfish time to say, I'm going to take 15 minutes, half an hour to do some kind of form of stretch or strength, motion, calisthenics type stuff. Is that a reward in itself to say that you can actually create that safe space mentally to get away from everything else that's going on?
Yeah, it will end up, I would suggest that it would end up becoming that scenario where, I mean, you can't go home and stand in the corner and just stare at the corner for 6 hours at night time, right? You'd go insane, yeah? But you could argue that if you were able to, that would at least be a distraction from the day and you could kind of get away from that, yeah? People go and sit and watch TV and that's the distraction that usurps their mind into that zone and they're not thinking about the things of the day. Or I'd self-medicate with alcohol or something along those lines. However, none of those things are making you a more professional athlete in any way, shape or form, as the analogy would go. And so to choose something that is low tone but consistent, where you can slowly master over time and that will help you improve in some way and will give you dopamine, it will give you focus. If you are able to do that enough over time, days in a row, etc., that itself becomes the distraction. And now you're getting a twofer. Now you're not just getting one thing. If you can get a threefer out of something, like go for gold. Maybe it makes you feel better in yourself because you focused on something. And while you were doing that, you forgot about the world around you. You're already in a twofer. Two things for one territory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then over time, that's giving you dopamine. It's giving you serotonin. If you are driving that along, you're not burning out your postsynaptic receptors. So you are just getting clean, powerful hormones and neurotransmitters. So I would suggest that is the way that you want to really start to think about, how am I going to get through my day? Nothing challenging. I'll just do it again tomorrow, or I'll do some version of it.
Yeah.
So the rule would be, don't do nothing.
Yes.
I'm not allowed to make it. I am not allowed to make it through my day without doing something.
Yeah.
Whether that's 3 squats and 1 press up, who cares? But nothing should become unacceptable.
And I think also you say a twofer, return on that process, even maybe the threefer is the sense of control you have because you can feel like a piece of fodder in a big system. People are pushing and pulling you, demanding of you into spaces that we don't deal with every day when you're going through the processes of building and buying and selling. And so perhaps it's that sense of control when everything else seemed a little bit out of control at times. Yeah,
that's it. And lack of control is going to happen in every area of life, right? I mean, you just leave the house and see what happens. Get in traffic. You're sort of in control thanks to the law. Drive on the left-hand side and stop at a red light, but you're not that much in control. And so you may as well practice something that helps you get semblance of control on a daily basis. Why would you not do that? That doesn't seem logical to me, to just come what may every single day and get cheap, free and easy satisfaction. Because if I say it out loud to you that that's going to have an end point, you're going to run out of runway at some stage if you're giving yourself everything cheap and free and easy, and you're going to get caught short. People don't deny that. They know it inherently. They're like, yeah, I just was waiting for somebody to say it out loud. So it makes reasonable sense to sort of call that out to people a little bit and go, hey, I know that you enjoy sitting on the couch for 4 hours every night, watching a bit of telly and having a couple of drinks. That's lovely. But if you're doing that consistently over time, then that's going to manifest something. It's going to make something happen, or not happen, as is the case.
But you can also perhaps watch television, see the news, but just not be sitting on the couch, right?
Yeah. So years ago, I kind of stopped sitting on the couch, and the way that I would reframe that to clients was the universe abhors a vacuum. Nobody's breaking physics here. Everything's relative, etc., etc. How about we just take something away rather than add something for people? Because a lot of people are busy. Their minds are already cluttered. A lot of people don't even have time to go to a friend's house or to a cafe and meet with somebody and have a single hour of their own time where the conversation isn't even about how painful their day is. It's like that people don't even create a safe space for themselves for even an hour in a week, right? And so my suggestion for people would be, let's, rather than add something, like rather than me give you an hour's worth of exercises every single day, because that would sound preposterous to most people that would come and see me. And so I'm not obviously going to do that. It would be, let's take something away rather, because you'll have to fill that space. Let's take your couch away for a little while from you. I mean, don't take your couch out of the room unless you really want to, then fine. But you might want to sit on it later on down the track. But don't sit on the couch while you're watching the news. You'll be forced to sit on the floor in some capacity. And at first you may not be able to sit on the floor for very long. Maybe you can only sit on that thing for 7 or 8 seconds or 10 seconds before it's a bit uncomfortable. Then fine, get up. But you'll have to do something. And if you did that night after night, chances are that you're going to be able to take some floor time for a little bit longer. You'll get accustomed to moving around simply by going, okay, right now's the moment where I don't sit on the couch. But you're still in your lounge, you've still got your cat, your dog, your partner, whoever is familiar to you around, and you're just not being dead still.
Yeah.
You're doing something. And so that would be a way to start. And that's literally what I did as well, and mimicking what I tell my clients to do.
And you talk about having the hour as a metaphor or as an example of, having that time put aside.
Yeah.
Is that partly to do with, say, what you're talking about before about running up the hill to see the sunset? You're physically able to do it, but when you're there, you're able just to be with that moment rather than worrying about everything else that's down the bottom of the hill?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So learning to focus on something helps you learn to focus on something. So if I'm sitting at a sunset and I've made myself resilient enough to climb that hill and get to it, well, am I resilient enough to, first of all, realize there are thoughts coming? I think it's something on average like 80,000 thoughts in a day, right? So it's not like nothing's coming in there. And you won't even notice that they're there. They just arrive out of the ether and then you're like, oh, thinking about that all of a sudden. And depending on how big that is in your life, whether or not you can extract that out and go, hang on, I don't need to think of that right now. I'm enjoying this. A rudimentary functional practice in any way is going to teach you how to rudimentarily functionally practice things. And then you can extrapolate that, apply that to, well, I'm just going to go and see a bunch of sunsets by default.
Yeah.
It seems like a decent thing to do. And I can use that now as a training for myself to go, can I be in a space and let go? Because if I'm thinking about my neighbor and how annoying they are, or I'm thinking about some person overseas that's not there with me on the beach watching a sunset.
Yes.
Now I've made a mistake.
Yep.
I've ruined the sunset is what I've done. And so I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want anybody else to do that. So how do you not do that? Well, you start small, you build, you practice other streams of things. Once that practice becomes somewhat easier to you, but you don't bite off more than you can chew. Yeah. Take your time frames out of it. Doesn't matter. You will have heard me say, do it before you die before you do it. It's the same thing. Who cares? I'm 40 months into rudimentary functional practices that I start lots of things at one repetition. They turn into 3, then they turn into 5, then they turn into 10. I will practice something until I can do it, or I find something that I can't do, practice it until I can do it, continue to do it until I can do it effortlessly, and then I relegate that into maintenance mode. So I'm always playing around with finding something new, dominating it in some way, and then, weirdly enough, it gives me things that I was not expecting later on down the track. So these are the things to come that I would see for people that, when they're arriving in my clinic room, we might have a conversation about that. I know that they can't see that happening, but that's just what would happen if you got off your couch and got a bit more resilient at moving around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key fundamental reasons for me starting and wanting Trends Property to be what it is to make the journey easier for people and have a better equity and access to information and resources that can just make what is quite a difficult, stressful time just that little bit easier. And so you talk about resilience. And so people have got to be pretty resilient to go through the processes that's thrown at you. But what's the difference between, say, strength that you might build versus resilience?
Yeah, okay. So if I'm having a conversation with a client on building more resiliency, the reason we're even using that word is because very early on in conversation, I've probably suggested that we take the word strength and just exchange that for resiliency, because resiliency is going to be a much more broad term that's going to apply to so many more things. We say strength, it's a little bit limiting in some way. They may think that we're just talking about strengthening their body in some form or fashion. But if we talk about resiliency, your ability to resist pressure in some way or stay more stable despite what's going on around you, you can extrapolate that out into emotional areas and into psychological areas. You would want to do the same thing for somebody who wasn't strong enough to make it through their day physically that you would do for somebody who wasn't strong enough to make it through their day emotionally. You would want to make them more resilient over time, both of those people. You'd want to take away whatever is the oppressive thing that's holding them down, getting them stuck, whatever it is, and give them tools to slowly build their resiliency levels so that they could, in a relative sense, face the thing from a position of higher resiliency, which might not even need to change that outside circumstance, because the relative perspective of being more resilient will make that less in some way. And then if you can change that at the same time, you can take away aggressors or problems that are causing the issue while making yourself more resilient. Like now you're in the green a lot more efficiently. It's like increasing a power to weight ratio. I could make myself stronger by dropping a little bit of weight and my power to weight would go up. I could do it by increasing my strength and resiliency of my system and that would go up. I mean, I could even do that by reducing some pain in some form or fashion so that my system didn't have a pain and fear inhibition that retarded my system in some way or restricted me. So there are lots of ways to relatively do lots of things.
Yeah.
So this becomes a part of the format and of the understanding. It's like, just keep going, nice and easy, make yourself more resilient, learn to extrapolate that into other areas of your life. And as you become, in a small way, proficient at those things, you'll start to get a bit of power back in your life. And that's the thing that would give most people what they're desiring, I would imagine, in a day. So just a little bit more power over the situation, whatever that is.
And you talk about the our brains working thoughts we might be having coming in out of our head every day. And you just talk about the word pain just then. And I know for you, you're hot on language and how you might reframe what some people call pain, you refer to as signal.
Yeah.
And so what is the difference?
Okay, so signal, I'm really just diluting it down as much as possible so that, again, we can extrapolate things out. So if I take a pin and I poke that into the end of your finger, you are going to say to me, that hurts, I feel pain. That's probably the most likely scenario without putting words into your mouth. But really what's happening is you're getting a signal interpretation from those receptors, whether they be pressure receptors or chemoreceptors or temperature receptors or whatever they are. This is the mechanism used to trigger that receptor. But really all that's happening is the interpretation of that is happening up in here. And it's a little ping of electricity that's going on in your system. And when it comes back to what command center up here, it's interpreting that and going, that is sharp. You're consciously, wherever you are in here somewhere, going, oh yeah, that's sharp. I recognize that. Feels like a pinprick. I've had those before as a child. And so you're saying it's pain, but it is just signal. And cut your hand off, probably no signal unless you get some sort of a phantom limb pain. And then it's just because not even there, you can still get signal. Now it's more interpretation, that it's deciding that there's something there even when there isn't. So I like to change out to things like signal, because that is literally just all that is happening. And I work with people in a way that we measure everything as well. And so we will grade pain in a pain scale so that we have something measurable, so that when I grab a hold of your arm really hard and go, how much does that hurt? We've already established some sort of 0 to 10 scale where you say, oh, that's a 5 out of 10. And we've agreed on what that is previously. So now I know how much I'm gripping and how much you say it hurts. I know how much signal flow you're getting and interpreting. It helps you measure when you think of things like pain in terms of just signal, which is what they are. And in other ways, I think it helps people take this whole idea of it hurts out and helps them realize I actually can modify that in some way. Like that can be modified because it is actually just signal interpretation. You get stung by a bee and you say that it hurts and you're terrified of insects and terrified of bees. It will hurt on a visual analog scale, 0 to 10, more than somebody who's a beekeeper and goes, oh, poor little fella just gave me a sting.
Yeah.
Like they might say that's a 3 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10, but somebody who's terrified of insects is probably going to go with a 6 or an 8.
Yeah.
So it's personal experience and relative interpretation that's happening. So I call it signal.
And do you find that with your patients, the people that are coming to see you, that the language component of how they describe or to name something? So if I was to say, I feel like I'm failing, or there's a sense of failure.
Yeah.
And often on the property journey, there's a lot of areas where you think, oh my gosh, this is too hard. This is failing. There's so many things I'm having to learn or overcome. And it can be a bit, put you a bit down.
Yeah.
Do you have a way of talking to them about what failure is in a different way?
Yeah. So I do differentiate between fails and learns. So that's one of the things that we would talk about fairly quickly, particularly in a rehab gym setting where people are going through, strengthening elements and balancing elements, and there's going to be things that they can't do. And there's going to be sometimes things that when they try to achieve those, they're going to get a bit wobbly and maybe fall over if we're doing a balance, yeah? I mean, we're trying not to have people in the rehab gym fall over. I don't want anybody breaking an arm or a leg. But we might start to frame that in learns and fails, that we are avoiding the fails, but we're learning to welcome a learn. I need to actually not be able to achieve something first time round, second time round, third time round, until I can begin to grasp it and hone that thing, whatever it is. Every time I don't achieve it, that's a learn. That's a learn, not a fail. People would go, I can't do that. That's a fail. And I don't want them to say that. I want them to teach themselves that, no, I'm actually chasing as many learns as I possibly can while avoiding fails. Fails are catastrophic and take you out of commission for some period of time, no matter what it is. And create some sort of high impedance air gap, as it were, where things just come to a total stop. But a learn, you're back on your feet again really quickly. And you're like, right, I just learned from that. And to not let a learn get you down in any way and to realize, yes, I got to learn. Right. The second I fell off of that thing but regained my balance, I'd learned something, and I will eagerly anticipate the next learn, because that's what will propel me a little bit faster. So yeah, reframing of just the way you say it to yourself, like what you're teaching yourself by what you say, can have some reasonable, what I've found over the years, some reasonable significance in people's lives.
So from a practical point of view, what could the audience do on a day-to-day basis if they had a moment, a couple of minutes, half an hour, whatever it is? What are some of the fundamentals that you think are a good starting point or some stepping stones they could take?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I mean, these are big questions, right? And so there's a lot of information in there, and you could go in a number of directions with these types of scenarios. And it depends on what somebody's going through in a particular day, as to what their needs might be or what they're even capable of achieving in that moment. But small things that you could practice that would have immediate results would be things like a breathing technique. It's fundamentally the one thing that you need more than anything else. Like, I could go without food for quite a period of time. I could even go without water for a few days in a desert, but let's see you hold your breath for a month or even an hour.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen. So your breathing is primarily what your system requires the most of. And so it makes a really obvious choice for people to go, okay, let's use some breathing tactics. You could box breathe, where you do this box-like breath in, hold, breath out, breath in, hold, breath out. I think at the moment, the breathing technique that would give the most satisfaction or the most immediate delivery would be a breath in, followed by a secondary breath in at the top of that first breath. So and then something with some duration under pressure, where you could make an anatomical sigh. You could and try to let go. It'll almost immediately start to reduce your heart rate after a few of those. And that physiological response in your system can be tactically quite useful. You did that at night time when you went to bed. I mean, it might not rescue you from a stressful situation while it's happening in real time and there's a confrontation or there's a real problem that you need to nut out in some way, but at least at night time or in an evening when you've got some semblance or a moment to yourself, you could literally do that every night, and as you become good at it, it becomes more of almost a meditative scenario where people go, actually, I've been breathing while I've been laying down in bed at night time, and I'm finding I'm falling asleep a little bit better. But it could also literally, if you're sitting in an office waiting to go into an interview and do a little bit of breath work like that, within about 3 breaths, you probably started to calm your heart rate down. So there'll be scenarios like that would be one of the fastest ways. Otherwise, it is realizing that you may just need to take some time for yourself, despite what's going on around you, and that you haven't done it for a long time, and literally do what we suggested or we talked about before, and that is go and catch up with a friend if you have friends. If you don't, then find a quiet space that's something that you think you would like, and change your environment. Go from one space to another, to a space that's cleaner than the space that you were in, as a deliberate act. And try very hard not to take what you had in that other space with you. Take your problem with you. Don't talk about it. Don't save that for another location, but create a clean space, like a clean room in your mind. So for some people, it literally might be catching up with somebody at a cafe for 1 hour a week is all they could cope with. And that's where I would start to cultivate something, to grow it.
Awesome. Well, I think you've shared some insights that might hopefully unlock some aha moments for people, sort of looking at reframing the way they've thought of the world.
Yeah.
Certainly give them some permission to actually think of things a bit more about how their body's working and how to fix them, things we take for granted every day. So it's been a pleasure to have you in to have a chat.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
And thanks to you for spending some time with us. Don't forget, you can find all our episodes on our platform by visiting trendsproperty.com. Here you can browse ideas and inspiration, products, people and places offering solutions for you on your property journey. Remember, you can sign up and join the Trends Property community where you can connect, collect and collaborate with others, or take advantage of our educational guides to help you take the right steps in the right direction. As always, thanks for listening. We hope to see you next time on the Trends Property Insight series, where we help you find your place, your way. Ka kite. Goodbye.